you doing? I am Jay Byrne, and welcome to this week's episode of the Effects Loop. This week we're going to talk a little bit about acoustic guitars in action and how, that little journey that I've been going down lately. I just picked this up. I am going to do a kind of like a Let's Talk Guitars video about this guitar, which is going to be a little bit more in detail about the guitar itself. But for now, we're just going to talk about the action, and I'm using it mainly as a tool to illustrate my point. But this is a 2023 inspired by Gibson Epiphone Hummingbird, which is, I've just wanted one of these for a long time, and I finally got my hands on it. And basically, if you get a good one, you get a good one. Like, these are really good guitars if you can get a good one. But right out of the box, when I got it, the action was old school acoustic guitar player action, which for somebody like me is a little bit higher than I'm comfortable playing, because I'm essentially an electric player. Although I have played acoustics my whole life and I've recorded a lot of acoustic stuff, most of the acoustics I played were sort of uncomfortable to play. And I've been kind of like fighting and trying to find that comfortable acoustic thing that people say actually does exist, which this now has. But let me tell you how I got there. This right here is the original nut that came with this acoustic guitar. Right out of the box, the action on this acoustic guitar was somewhere around 6.5 64ths and like 5 64ths on the high end. And the relief was pretty much flat. Was maybe like 0.004 or something like that, but it was pretty much flat, which is fine. I found that I actually had to add a little bit more relief to this. It's more around like 0.006, 0.008 now. Between those, it's not like perfect, but it's between those, in order to get the action down, because I was getting a little bit of buzz on the first fret. And I don't think it's the fretwork. I think it was just that, like, I'm asking this guitar to do something that these guitars kind of sort of weren't made for. And I think that's something that's interesting to talk about nowadays, is that modern players, will take an instrument that's either vintage or designed to be like a vintage instrument and try to impose modern standards on them, like low action on an electric or an acoustic or whatnot. Acoustic guitars, generally speaking, it's considered medium action, but it's high by electric guitar player standards. Like, the action is high by most people's standards. You look at it and you go, wow, that's high, but it's not really high. It's just the way an acoustic is designed. Like, it's supposed to slope up over here. Most people will see lower action down here, and then the strings start getting higher up here, like with an electric. But with an electric, you can get it a little bit more evened out, where it seems kind of even across the board. But with an acoustic guitar, with that sound hole, you want to get that nice, a bigger sound. And I'm running 11s on here right now, which are essentially a low gauge. I had 10s. 10s are way too low. It just doesn't work with this guitar. 11s give it that sound that a hummingbird has. You know what I mean? Like, it just gives it a sound. It's loud enough for me. It's got enough bass. It's got enough twang. It works. But, so, you want a little bit of raise. You don't want a lot, but you want a little bit. So I learned a lot of things about checking an acoustic guitar, because I went through a journey and a half getting this guitar. I learned about how to make sure the neck is set up properly by running a straight edge to here to make sure that it has the angle that it's supposed to have. I learned about, like, the belly bulge thing, which these type of guitars do have, it's going to be hard for you to see on the camera, but they do have a bit of a radius. So you will get a little bit of bulge, a little bit of lift from this. That's just the way that these guitars are made. And if they're made with like a good like tone wood, like this is a spruce Sitka top and mahogany back and sides. If it's made with good tone wood, it's going to be a little bit loose, the bracing. So, not the bracing is going to be loose, but the wood is going to move and vibrate with the guitar. That's what you want in an acoustic guitar. You want it to actually have a sound, because if it's braced down so tight on the inside that it doesn't move, it probably sounds really dead, because it just doesn't. Yeah, I mean, you want a little bit of a movement. Some guitar brands go for what they call flat top, although flat top, it doesn't necessarily mean the guitar is flat right across the actual, belly area. But this guitar has a little bit of a hump, and it's nothing significant. I think if I put like 13s on it, it might be a little bit bigger, but it seems normal. By everything that I've researched and looked at, it seems like it's normal. I mean, it's brand new out of the box. So the bracing's fine. I've checked everything in this guitar. It comes with a little sound hole humidifier. I use that a little bit. Although I honestly don't think this guitar needs an awful lot of humidification right now. I mean, it's getting muggier in this area where I live on the East Coast. So I don't want to overdo it either, because if you overdo it, then the wood gets soft and then you're going to get a bigger belly down there. So it's a fine line. And this is all the stuff that drives you crazy once you start getting into the acoustic world, because the acoustic world is very different than the electric world, and there are so many different variables to look into. But let's get back to the action, because that's kind of what this video is about. I mean, it's about acoustic guitar in general, but this is what about the action. So, like I said, this was around 6.5, close to 7, 64ths on the low E, and it was around 5, just over 5 on the high, which is high. I mean, if you're playing any type of strings that have any girth to them, I mean, you can put light gauge, like super light gauge strings, and it brings it down a little bit, and you can like get the board pretty flat. But if you're putting anything on here like 11s, 12s, 13s, I mean, this action is just going to raise right up, and you've got some serious action. So I wasn't horribly confident in my abilities to shave a bone nut. So what I did was I went on Amazon and I found this company. I'll put a picture on the video here, and I'll put a link in the description as well. I can't remember the name of the company off top, but it was $19 for a new bone nut that essentially is exactly the same as the nut that they're putting in these guitars, the bone nut. I mean, it's got the little contours, like what do they call that? I can't remember what it's called. I'll put it on the screen if I can remember it. But basically, it is it's the same nut. It's exactly the same nut. So I had to shave this thing down. Now let me tell you, right out of the package, they give you a piece of sandpaper, whatever. It is not. The ones that you get, they're thicker. They don't fit into the groove properly. They're thicker and they're a little bit longer on the sides. So you're going to have to shave a little bit off. I went very little at a time. It took me forever. I would have actually put it in this video, but it just took me forever to do it. So it's kind of boring to watch anyway. Literally me with sandpaper, and I had a little something, I had like a piece of wood that I was using to guide it to keep it straight. And every now and then I would have to double check it to make sure it's straight, because this has a piezo, because it's also an electric acoustic. So you want to make sure it's flat on the piezo so that you don't screw up the sound that's coming out of an amp if you're going to plug the guitar in. But after much shaving, and I finally got this thing down pretty much matched to this, then I was able to start taking off from the bottom. Now I did a lot of research on this. Now, I mean, if you're not comfortable doing something like this, the reason why I bought a spare nut is because I didn't want to mess with this one. This one is factory. So this way, worst case scenario, I can put the factory one back in there and the guitar is exactly the same way as it was when it came out of the box. But I wanted to give it a shot and see if I could make it better. And I did, actually. So I filed it down. What you want to do is, say you've got 7/74 height on your low E and 5/64. I said 74. Sorry, 7/64 on the low E and 5/64 on the high E, and you want to shave that down. You want, with your preferred gauge, which I'm using an 11. I want it to be 5/64 on the top E and 4/64 on the high E, which is, you know, pretty standard, normal, comfortable playing action for the most part. Well, because of the way the guitar playing, because of the way the strings go up towards the bridge, you need to shave off. So that was going to be, you have to double what you're actually going to shave, okay, off of this. So if you wanted to shave off, you wanted to remove 2/64 from the top and the bottom, you need to do 4/64 off the bone nut. So, you know, get yourself a pencil and something straight that you can mark it off, and mark off, maybe I'll put a line where it's around 4/64, and I shaded it a little bit so that it was easy to see what I was doing. And I made sure my line was nice and straight. That's tricky. You don't want to mess that up. But I can tell you, my process was meticulous, but I wouldn't call it perfect. And I did not mess up my intonation. The intonation, everything is perfectly fine. So I would assume there is a little room for error. There's a little bit here and there where you can drift off. So you would have wanted to shave off, if you were going to take 2/64 off, you're going to take 4/64 off the bottom of that saddle, okay? You don't want to go too far, because you go too far, then it comes down. I mean, I freaked myself out at first, because originally I had the 10s on here. When I put it down, I mean, my action was low. It was like 4/64 here and 4/64. It played amazing, but it buzzed in a few spots, which I probably could have fixed with the truss rod. But there was a few little spots that were buzzing. So I was like, okay, when I put the heavier gauge strings on, it's going to come up a little bit, and it did. And now it's perfect, basically. I mean, it's pretty comfortable to play. It's pretty comfortable to play across the board. I mean, you're not going to be soloing on this thing. And with acoustic guitar strings, they're a little stiff. So there's not much bending going on, unless you go out and buy, you know, silken steels or something like that, or like satin steels or whatever they call those. The strings that are, you know, easier to bend. But these strings that I have on here right now are 11 gauge, Martin, authentic acoustic, 80/20s. That's what's on here. And they're relatively comfortable to play. I mean, as far as acoustic guitar goes. But yeah, so I got it down. I shaved it, got it in there, got it down, and I got my action down to like 5/64, 4/64, just the way I like it. I mean, it is like spot on. And I gave the neck a little bit more relief, because the neck was like straight. I gave it a little bit relief because I was getting a little bit of buzz on like the first fret. But once I gave the neck a tiny bit more relief, now it's around 0.006, 0.007, around there. It's in between 6 and 8. And it's still pretty flat, but I don't get any buzzing up and down. So I was getting some buzzing here and there, but by doing this, everything seemed to play out pretty well. And yeah, so there it is. So I've got my action down and it works. But out of the box, the action is a little high. And I mean, that's how you do it. That's how you bring it down. Like I said, maybe I'll throw some pictures in here to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. Shaving off the bottom with a piece of sandpaper. You can use 100 grit sandpaper. I used 100 grit. Just keep it nice and straight on the sandpaper. Just shave it down. It takes a while, and it's a bit messy because it's bone and it doesn't smell the greatest when it's shaving off. But if you take your time and do it, you can get it done. Because I was actually pretty impressed with myself when I finished it. So yeah, there we go. Like I said, I'm going to do a little bit more of a profile on this guitar in another video, but yeah, I don't know. acoustics are a whole other animal. If you're dealing with a solid wood body, you've got to deal with humidification. You may have to adjust your nuts at the saddle and the actual nut to get the action that you're looking for. The nut seems pretty good on this guitar right out of the box, as far as I can tell. But yeah, so there it is. Anyway, that was my rant for this week. If you like this kind of stuff, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and yeah, you'll get another video next week. So I'm Byrne, and this has been the Effects Loop. I hope you enjoyed. Take care.